Hi friends, Christy here from makingitinthe-mountains.com, and today I'm going to show you how I've made this adorable embroidered pillowcase. Alright friends, welcome back to my channel today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm super excited to be sharing this tutorial as part of the Home Decor and DIY Challenge hosted by my friend Christina at the DIY Mommy. So if you aren't familiar with these DIY and decor challenges, they are a great source of inspiration each and every season, and I'm always so excited to see what everyone has to share. I will be sure to post a link to the entire playlist in the description box below for you. But first I want to show you just how simple this beautiful vintage inspired embroidered pillowcase was to make. Now, I am just getting into embroidery as a hobby. This is actually only my second project, but I'm absolutely loving it. Lately, I've been finding myself especially drawn to more vintage pieces that bring up that nostalgic feeling, which is why I think I am so drawn to the art of embroidery. It's a bit of a lost art. I think it was something that I saw as a child growing up. It was more in my, say, grandma's generation, but I love the resurgence it's having with more modern patterns, but still that nostalgic feel. I also really love what an easy hobby it's been to pick up, and even as a total beginner, I am so thrilled with the pieces that I've been able to create. Now, this project includes a few different stitches, but they are super easy to learn, and I will be sure to share each of them in the tutorial that follows. Utilizing these different stitches just helps to add a bit more texture to the piece. Now, I'd say this is a really great project for beginners. Not only is it really simple to make, but best of all, it doesn't take much at all for materials. I used a simple linen pillowcase that I had laying around already and collected a few of my favorite colors of embroidery floss, as well as an embroidery hoop and an embroidery needle. Now, to create this design, I actually used a simple stick-on pattern that I will be sure to link to in the description box below. But you could also purchase your own PDF pattern or even find them for free on the internet and simply transfer it onto your piece using some carbon paper and a pencil. This pillow was such a simple project to make, and I cannot wait to share it with you. So the first thing you'll need to do is transfer your pattern onto your fabric. Mine was super easy because I had this sticker that simply washes away when I'm done. Then I sealed one layer of fabric into my embroidery hoop. Now, it's really important that you seal this up nice and tight so that you don't end up with any wrinkles while you're working. Now, I'm going to start with those big flowers in the middle first. So whatever color you're choosing to make your flower, you're going to want to cut a length of string about 2 feet long. Thread one end through your needle and tie a knot in the other end. Now, you'll notice because I was working with something quite bulky, I decided to use some binder clips to hold the extra fabric out of the way. Working on one petal at a time, you're going to take your needle from the bottom through to the top, finding an outer edge in the middle of one of your petals to come up through. And then you'll take your needle down through the other side of your petal to create a line right down the center. Come back up directly beside that first stitch and go down right next to your other one. This simple up and down is called a satin stitch. And you're going to continue this all the way through until you've filled in your entire petal, coming up from the outside edge and down into the inside edge, until your entire petal is filled in with stitches. Now, as you come to the end of your string each time, you're going to need to tie it off. So to do this, you're going to take your needle under one of your previous stitches on the back, and then run it through the loop that you've created to tie a knot around that string. I like to do this a couple of times just to make sure it's really secure, especially on a pillowcase that will be washed. And then I simply tuck it under a few stitches before cutting it off completely. Continue on with this satin stitch until you've filled in all of your petals. Now I decided to work in a few extra stitches on each petal with a different color just to add a bit of interest and dimension to my flower. So this is just 3 simple satin stitches in the middle of each flower. I completed the other large flower in the very same way, using a satin stitch to finish all of my petals, and then adding in 3 stitches of a different color just to add that extra dimension. Now, if you find yourself wondering about any of the colors I've used here today, I will be sure to leave them in the description box below for you. Now with the 2 larger flowers finished, I decided to move on to the smaller flowers next, simply because it requires the exact same stitches. So I'm just going to use that satin stitch, working 1 petal at a time until I filled in all 3 smaller flowers. With all of my flower petals finished, I decided to move on to the centers next. Now to add a bit of texture here, I decided to go with a French knot rather than a simple satin stitch. So to do this, I came up through the center near the edge of my petal. Then, holding my needle quite close to the piece, I wrap the yarn around it twice and then push it back through quite close to where I initially came up. Now the real trick to this is to hold your thread quite tight as you pull it through, and that really helps to get you that distinct knot that you can see. So again, I came up through the center, wrapped the thread around my needle twice, and then pushed it back down through just beside where I came up. Making sure to hold that thread nice and tight until I pulled it all the way back through. I used this French knot technique to fill in the centers of all of my flowers, though I did switch to a different color to fill in the smaller ones. Okay, moving on to the smallest leaves, I used a detached chain stitch to stitch these ones. So this basically uses an open loop to create the leaf. So I'm going to start with the top leaf here first, coming up through the bottom of it, and then going back down through the bottom right next to where you came up, but not pulling your thread all the way through. You're going to leave a little loop here that you're going to attach at the top with another stitch. So bringing your needle up through the top of your leaf, you're going to thread the needle through the loop, pulling it through until your stitch is tight, but not so tight that it looks like a straight line. It still has that little loop there. Then you're going to go right back down on the other side of your loop to tack your loop in place. So it's really important that you don't stitch your loop too tight here, otherwise it's just going to create a wide line rather than a loop. If you found that you've pulled it too tight, just use your needle to loosen those stitches up a bit. Repeat this detached chain stitch until you've finished all of the leaves on each branch, and then attach them all together with a simple satin stitch from top to bottom. Now we're going to go back to that simple satin stitch to finish off the rest of our leaves, but there's a bit of a technique here when you're working on leaves. So you're going to start these just like you did with your petals, going up through the top and down through the bottom to create that center line. Then come up right next to that top stitch again, but then instead of going in at the bottom, you're actually going to put your needle in about halfway down your leaf. And then just simply repeat this, coming up beside each top stitch and going down just below each middle stitch until you've filled in your entire leaf on both sides. on until you've filled in all of the leaves on the branch, and then using a straight stitch, attach all of those leaves with one stitch from that top leaf down to the bottom leaf to make your branch. Now you're going to use the exact same technique to fill in those larger leaves as well. So just start with that center line and work your way down each side until all of your leaves are filled. As you can see, I used a different color of green for each type of leaf. I also chose to add in 3 simple stitches to the larger leaves with some lighter green as well, just to add a bit more dimension. With all of my stitching done, it was time to remove my pattern sticker. Now if you traced on your pattern with carbon paper, you'll get to skip this step. It's really actually quite simple. I just ran it under some warm water and the sticker dissolved away. And that is it, friends. A beautiful embroidered pillowcase that brings that vintage charm to any space. Now, if you didn't want to make yourself a pillowcase, you could definitely use this technique to embroider just about anything, including a simple piece of fabric that you can just leave inside the embroidery hoop, finishing it with a piece of felt on the back and hang it on your wall as art. This is actually what I did for my very first embroidery project, which you can see hanging there in the background on the ladder. I can leave a link to that just in case you want to read more about it on my blog. Okay friends, I hope you enjoyed this video and that this tutorial has inspired you to try your very own embroidery project too. If you loved this video, please give it a thumbs up below and of course subscribe to my channel for even more farmhouse style DIY, decor, and recipe ideas. Thank you so much for watching.